welcome. This is Seventh Sanctum, and I am Kerry Ann. And tonight I am being joined with Natalie, who is co-host over at Seventh Sanctum. You haven't met her yet, actually. Our official introduction of Natalie hasn't aired, but this is a special that we're doing for Halloween. We thought it'd be a good idea for us to get together and for us to be able to give you our take of Halloween and the things that we've learned along the way, including some interesting superstition and the origins. But just quickly before we get into things, I'm going to let Natalie have a bit of a chat and tell a little bit about who she is. We have done this already, you just don't know it yet. So Natalie's going to introduce herself a little bit and then we'll get stuck right in. Thank you, Natalie, for joining me.
That's all right, my pleasure. I'm Natalie. I've agreed to co-host with Kerry, and I can waffle on about the paranormal for like probably all day. But whether it's any sense or not is we'll have to let the listeners decide for themselves. But yeah, I'm sort of like a little bit more on the spiritual / psychic side than the paranormal side, but I do like the paranormal. I've just got into it in the last few years, so it'll be interesting to co-host this show so that I can talk about interesting new things to me, even if it's not to anybody else. But,
even in our last conversation that we had, I learned a lot. So I know that we'll have lots of interesting conversations with each other and other people that join us, and it'll be a good journey. So I'm glad that I'm able to do this with you, and I look forward to all those amazing things. So Halloween is this week.
Yeah, a special time of the year, the only time of the year, better than Christmas.
Absolutely. And it's definitely a time for the weirdos to shine. That makes me the happiest.
Quite sure how to take that. Like, hey mister, we are the weirdos.
That's it. I was making a slight nod there to the craft.
Yeah, definitely.
OGs in the house. But yeah, we are the weirdos. But yeah, absolutely. I love Halloween. I live for it. It's always Halloween in my soul. My most favorite thing about Halloween is when the Halloween decorations go into sale, so I can start adding to my household aesthetics.
Yeah, the year round, we do the annual sale at Halloween so that we've got the year round decorations, because you can't get ghosts the rest of the year and the pumpkins and things. So yeah, I've already started checking out Sainsbury's and Tesco to see what they've got. Yeah, Sainsbury's, they've got some pretty good stuff this time round. I was like, oh, that's cool. I like that mug. Oh, I like that little light up ghost. That'll look nice on my shelf. But
absolutely. And yeah, they've got a massive sale in there at the moment. I particularly love the throw cushions, and that's not just there. It's like in a couple of other shops. There are some beautiful throw cushions this year, and I love fluffy blankets as well. So I might have gone overkill.
Oh, so you're going to be buried under blankets all winter then, basically, like 10 different blankets.
Exactly, and they've got skulls and they've got all sorts on them. So there's not a better blanket to be buried under, to be fair.
Yeah, skull blanket.
Exactly.
I'm jealous. Mine's only just grey and fluffy. I want skulls on mine.
I'll have to show you off camera when we're finished. But I have the most amazing. It's got all sorts on it. The Ouija on it, and the Ouija letters and numbers all over it, and yeah. So yeah, it is my most favorite thing to do, is to go into the Halloween sales and seeing what else I can have for the rest of the year.
I tell you what, one thing that does annoy me about Halloween and Christmas though is that I think we should ban Christmas before bonfire night, because I went in the other day because I seen a t-shirt with a sugar skull on it and I was like, oh, that's really nice. When I get paid, I'll go and get it. And all the Halloween clothing's disappeared already. And I was really upset, and I was like, I don't want Christmas stuff. I want a black t-shirt with a skull on it.
Yeah, thank you.
Like, we should ban Christmas until Halloween.
This is a movement I can get behind, Natalie. I can back.
It should make it a religious holiday so they cannot intrude on it. It should be barred until afterwards.
Oh, it's funny to say that, because technically it is a religious holiday. It just
Oh,
isn't. Yeah,
good point.
it,
Good point.
it is technically a religious holiday. However, I don't know how far we could go by saying no,
Santa
no
Christmas.
crosses
Yeah. No
until
Santa Claus before.
yeah, until after. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's a good place to start because some of the
Yeah.
things. So, Halloween, as what we know now, is the Christian name, or Hallows Eve. But pre-Christian, it's Samhain has always been a big part of in England as well. So a lot of people, me and you were speaking before, Natalie, where believe that the origins of Halloween comes from America.
Yeah.
But
Yes. I always thought it was really Americanized because we didn't actually have Halloween when I was younger. So, it was only when I went to uni, like in the sort of like aging myself a bit, but early 90s, that, you'd go out on Halloween and dress up, but the trick or treating thing we never did. So I always thought it was an Americanized holiday thing because it was just a way of selling sweets and pumpkins. Because obviously in England we don't generally grow pumpkins. So I was like, where's this come from? It's a bit weird. And then it just seemed to have taken off. But my friend was Scottish, from Fife, and she was a lot bigger on Halloween than I was, and she used to get really annoyed with me because we didn't do Halloween where we were at the time. So yes, if you'd like to. Oh, and just as an aside, sorry, it's like, how do you pronounce? Is it Samhain or Samhain, or I've never known how you pronounce it. The
Samhain,
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 Samhain. Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
So because it's Celtic, it's not
Right.
um it's not one that you can say spelling out. It's not phonetically
Okay.
said. So essentially the way that I see it is Sowwin, Samhain.
Samhain. Okay. Yeah. For years I've always been like, I don't even know how to pronounce that. So now I know. Thank you. Samhain.
It's Samhain.
Samhain.
So essentially it is the Celtic Fire Festival, and it
Okay.
is to acknowledge the end of the harvest season, as essentially it's welcoming the new year. So that's kind of what it was. And when you think religion or belief before pre-Christian, a lot of it was pagan. That's why a lot of the later holidays you can trace back to paganism. Uh, so yeah, so it was basically there to kind of honor this time of change where we went. So essentially, they split the year back in the day. Back in the
Yeah.
day,
Back in the day. Many
this
hundreds of
this
years ago.
yeah, 84 years. Another film reference there. Um, so they split the year into two parts. They had the light year, day of the year, like the half that was of light, and then half of that was dark. And
Okay.
essentially, Samhain was the middle, was the day between the two. But you
Right.
can trace it all throughout the history. So before it was pre-Christian, which was All Hallows Eve, which is basically for Christians, it was the praying. Basically, it was the celebration of the saints that they didn't really have enough room or enough days in the year to be able to honor otherwise, if that makes sense. So that
Okay.
day would be all saints.
Yeah, because they've got quite a lot of saints, haven't they?
Yes.
Some of sections of Christianity have a lot of saints.
So
Yeah.
they could use that day to honour them saints. So
Yeah.
again, there's still crossovers there because they would pray and they would honour, and whereas um, paganism, it was about honouring our ancestors and those that are no longer with us. And it's interesting actually, at the different perspectives people have depending on the perspective they have in life and belief. Um,
Right.
probably get into that a bit more later. But for example, like with the Irish, it was Celtic, Samhain, and then for which also is summer end. And then you had Winter's Night for Norse paganism. Um, and then you had as well Anglo-Saxons would call it the Blood Month. So all throughout
Wow.
history, They had.
I was gonna say that sounds a little bit. You're like, oh yeah, oh blah blah blah, ancestors, the blood month. It's like,
because
I'm not even sure why they. Do you know why they called it the blood month?
Yes.
Or is that when? Go on then. I don't. Do I want to know? I'm not sure.
That's what. So from what I've learned, from what I've looked at, there's common themes throughout all of them, right?
Yeah.
So, in all aspects, All Hallows or Samhain, sorry, it's about being able to celebrate, to
Yeah.
be joyous, to they've harvest all this food because it's end of harvest, and it's about, for some aspects it would be that it would be the end of their hunting, the end of their war, the end of their harvest, and it would be family, community, and everyone come together. That is what's familiar across all of them.
Okay.
But essentially October going into the darker months represent death and illness and famine and lots of really not so great stuff. So that's essentially why it was referred to as the blood month, because
Okay.
from my understanding, I could be wrong. If I am, I welcome that. Bring it to me. Teach me your ways.
I was going to say, if you think about it, it does make sense because I was reading a book on the Vikings a little while ago, and it's like they tended to stop raiding once it started getting like more winter as a general rule. So you've got like the slaughtering of your animals and the curing of the meat and that. You've also got them coming home from wherever battles and fights and arguments they've been having. So I suppose in a weird kind of way, there's that transitionary thing between, like you say, you've got your life, your death, your harvest, and your sudden lack of things to grow. But then you've also got the cultural thing going on where, like you say, there's a change because like the Vikings used to go back home to basically sort of, homestead, farm, go out the winter, set their crops in the spring, and then they went off raiding again. So I suppose in a weird kind of way, if you've got a sort of nomadic type culture, that would make sense because there's a lot going on at this time of year. It's because they're all settling in for the winter, aren't they, and thinking about
And they're
things.
preparing themselves for what could be quite real.
Yeah.
So again, when you look at All Hallows, All Hallows Eve, when they're starting to pray to the saints, honouring the saints on that day, when you think that a lot of the time in the winter months, a lot of people were just hoping to get through to the spring, because of the fact that there was no. So you have this kind of festival. This is the harvest festival. So for the Celtic festival, this was the third and last harvest of the year. So they had all this like abundance of food, abundance of family, abundant, all the communities together. People have come back from war. People have come back from raiding. I don't know. They've done lots of everyone's back home and they're sharing their stories, and this is where your folklore comes from, and this is where so you have all of this community stuff happening where you've got abundance of everything, but they're also that stark reality of knowing that that's not always going to be the same for the next couple of months. There is a lot of famine, a lot of illness, a lot of unrest, and I think it's like people were actually looking at the morality, so no matter what perspective you go back from that, no matter what perspective you stand upon, like where your beliefs at, or even what era you're in, that remains the same throughout. So it's just, I find that very interesting, actually.
I suppose the coming darkness as well, because I mean, this is the time of year when suddenly the nights are longer and you can't go out and do a lot in the same way, or especially not before electric. So, you were stuck at home and with your thoughts a lot more, and you see the darkness, and I suppose it has its own character and temperament, particularly when you link it with winter. So it is quite a transitional time of year, isn't it? I suppose there's a lot of going on sort of mentally and psychologically as well as physically, and like you say, emotionally. you know, with the community thing, and then the worry and fear. But thank goodness we've got harvests as well, so that we've got something to live on. But yeah.
We can also see, so that's really isolating and kind of but you can also see the effect that has within communities. Like when you look at the witch trials, a lot of the time when you look at these pockets of trials that happened around UK, let's just say the UK alone, a lot of them happened in an area that was kind of experiencing adversities, more than one, you know. So it could be that they're in an economic crisis. One, you know, for example, there was also a time where it was going on during the Cold War, and there wasn't a lot of trade coming through in the cities that, you know, used to have the boat trades and stuff coming in. So all these things, when people were starting to get desperate, when they were having barren crops and no resources, they turn on one another and like start, when there isn't any real logical explanation and it can't be fixed, people are usually, or it's observed to have, you know, turned to unrational, illogical, supernatural explanations. So you can see how that has that when it has on the person when they turn on each other. So you can see how that could affect them in the, like you said, that the light and the dark. You can see how that affect someone mentally in the later years, for them to go through this really kind of like joyous, and for then it to be quite dark, and you know, the blood month, you know.
Yeah. I should always call it the blood months now.
Do you know what? I think bring it back. Although I say that not, I feel like I know that's why it's called it. If it isn't, and there we are promoting it, then maybe we need to send an apology message out. We retract that statement. We did not believe what we were saying.
I'll have to look that up because I've never heard that before. Did you say it was a northern pagan thing?
It's Anglo-Saxon.
Anglo-Saxon, okay.
Yes, blood month.
That would be interesting.
But it's been named. It's got lots of different names, and it only become All Hallows Eve Christian. It's when the Christians then applied it, and that's when it become All Hallows Eve. So then we look at like the traditions that we have today and how those could have progressed through time, because we see how it almost shape shifts really name wise, and how it applies to different belief systems or within that community, how it's relevant to them. But there is lots of things that remain the same. So customs that we have today, you can see where the origins have come from, although it probably isn't the same now, exactly the same. You can see where the origins come from. Like for example, we do pumpkins now, and it's probably common knowledge why we do pumpkins, and it might not be for some. So I've always believed that depending on what you carve into your pumpkin, what you carve into your pumpkin depends on who you want to attract or who you want to repel from your home. So if you put a scary face on it, then you're trying to ward off evil spirits. And if you put a happy face in it, then you're trying to bring in positive vibes and good energy. And one thing I haven't mentioned, which is fundamental to it all, is Halloween or Samhain is the thinning of the veil. So it's the time where the spirit world and the earth plane, the earth world, has its highest connection. And again, that's that is observed throughout. When you with the All Hallows Eve, they believe it's the closest that you become to that other world. So when they do these pumpkins with scary faces in, they're trying to scare away from the wandering spirits that might be wishing ill or harm on their house. But then obviously the happy face, you want to bring happiness and good vibes and good spirits in. But that didn't start as pumpkins. It actually started off as turnips. Turnips to be able to do it.
Could you imagine trying to carve a turnip? It's like,
yes, I know.
Did they actually carve the turnips?
Yes, they carved turnips. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a Celtic tradition, is that they would carve turnips. And I could only liken that to like trying to cut up a sweet potato, which is a feat within itself. That is.
I was gonna say, did they put the lights in them as well, or were they just carving faces on, or were they actually carving them like we carve a pumpkin to put a light in it?
Yes.
That's impressive if that is the case.
I know. Yeah, it is. But yeah, so that's where the tradition comes from. So it's something that we've always kept for
Okay.
as long as time has gone on. But from my understanding, for what I've learned, is that it depends on what kind of. So when you see a pumpkin that's got the Oogie Boogie Man in it, like mine, they're very conflicted, be very confusing for spirits. Because people get a lot more inventive now on what they carve into their pumpkins. I saw the other day someone had carved in the photo of the promo for Practical Magic in the front of their pumpkin.
Oh wow. Yeah, you get some real creative ones now. You're thinking like, I don't like the smell of raw pumpkin. So to stand in front of a pumpkin for that long to get like some of the things that people manage to carve into it is just like kudos to anyone that can stand near a raw pumpkin for that long, honestly.
I would even go as far as saying if anyone wants to send in their pictures of pumpkins for me and Natalie to have a look at, we would love that.
Would
I
be
think it's so some people are so artistic and it boggles the brain a little bit.
It's very impressive. It's like you do see some in there, they're like they're like works of art and they last for like what day or week or so, and then they just start caving in on themselves. I think I'd cry if that was me. If I spend that much time doing something that beautiful and then just, mind you, I suppose that is perfect Halloween symbology.
Yeah.
You've got the life and then it's caving in on itself. So I suppose in a weird kind of way that would actually be ritualistically probably more in keeping with the spirit of Halloween than a lot of other things. But
And there's lots of parts of the pumpkin that you can use. So for magic sake, pumpkin seeds are really good for any kind of spells that you say. No, I take that back. Pumpkin seeds are good for spell work, not any
okay.
spell work. They're really good for spell work though. I have a friend who absolutely adores roasted pumpkin seeds in honey, and she loves eating them. Um, and also, I've seen a lot of people when they talk about the one thing I don't necessarily agree with, and I'm going a bit off topic a little bit, is I think how many pumpkins are grown, manufactured, carved into, and then nothing happens with them a year at Halloween when you think of
Yeah.
food waste.
Oh yeah, that's true.
That's the only thing.
Yeah.
So I would say if anyone does have a pumpkin, then taking them out to the woods, and as long as there's nothing in there that could be poisonous or harmful to any wildlife, then squirrels and stuff love eating them. Um, Another thing that I have seen people do, which I think is quite nice, is once they're finished with their pumpkins, they're letting their young people write a wish on a piece of paper and then putting it in the pumpkin and then burying the pumpkin, which essentially, depending on obviously making sure the papers you can bury it would be great. But it's replenishing the earth and it's the nutrients and stuff coming from that. So there's lots of positive ways of being able to dispose of pumpkins these days rather than just caving. Sounds like me on a night out. Start off the night looking, wow, chef's kiss. And then by the end, I'm like caving in myself. My eyelashes all up there. My
One
makeup's
eye
come down my face.
I shall never go out again and like look in the mirror when I come home and like I've got the pumpkin analogy in my head now. It's
Yeah.
like you look like an old Halloween pumpkin now.
Yeah.
It's like your makeup's all smearing and the candles burn your hair and
Exactly. It is. You make clothes here and yeah, the amount of times I've come home and I've got fake eyelashes on and they're like half hanging off. It's like
yeah.
stuck to one corner, but all the rest is just there, living its best life, raw dogging life. Just yeah, I'm like, this is not a vibe. How did I not notice this? How did I not feel?
That's like
Like,
when I was younger, I was like a demi-goth, and it's like you go out and your eyeliner would be beautiful, and you come back and you look like something out of The Ring. It's like, because everything's just dropped down your face, and you're like, oh my God, I've been going around thinking I look really lovely, and I've got these massive black things all over my face, and it's all fell down my face, and I look awful. But yeah.
We'll forever use the concave. Was it concave? That's not the right word, is it? When the pumpkin starts imploding on itself. It's not concave.
It's sort of. It goes concave. I don't know what the word. Do you know what? I know implode. No, it doesn't implode. That's not really the right. I don't know.
I actually thought I'd made concave up. That went up. Okay.
I know what you mean. My brain's gone dead. I'm normally really good with big words. It's like I'm a really wordy person, but my brain's like, yeah, I've got the words in there somewhere. I might dig it out in about 3 hours' time. You know, it's like, oh yeah, it's a bit late now. We'll edit it back in again later.
What we could do is just record that one word and then ask Andy just to put it over the top whenever we say it.
Yeah. So instead of beeping things out, we're adding a little word in instead.
Yeah. That sounds like a good plan. So one of the things we spoke about before as well, you've come across some really interesting superstitions. I really am interested. Actually, let's talk about. Let's talk about the love stuff, because one of the things when you do with Halloween, there's lots of different ways that you can use the energy of Halloween. Some of it's ancestry stuff, so honoring our ancestors and being able to communicate with them. Some people just, light a candle and just honor them that way. Other people do meditations. It's a great time of releasing anything that doesn't serve you anymore, and it is essentially the witch's new year. So anything that you would do for New Year's Eve in terms of resolutions is a great time to do it, but just, with the magical touch of witchcraft. So those are the kind of things that people do, but there's some loved ones that you've come across, isn't there?
Yeah, I was looking up Halloween superstitions, and they seem to fall into like about 4 categories. You've got your ancestral ghosts thing, and you've got your evil spirits thing, your witches thing, and then divination for your future spouse. Let's just throw it into the mix. We're thinking about death and the other side, and if you want to know your future husband, you can do these really strange sort of slightly, one of them's actually a little bit creepy. There was one I found. It was like you take a candle into a dark room on Halloween, and you look into a mirror while eating an apple that you've sliced into pieces, and when you get to the last piece, your future husband will appear behind you asking for that last piece of apple. And I'm like, if I'm in a dark room with a candle looking into a mirror, somebody comes over my shoulder and takes my last piece of apple, I'm not sure I want to marry them. Because it's like it's like, what are you doing in my room? It's like, are you here all the time or what? It's like, I found that one a little bit strange, to be fair. But there was quite a few about sort of predicting future spouses. I mean, in Scotland as well, apparently single women would put hazelnuts next to the fire grate, and each hazelnut would represent a potential suitor, and they'd wait to see which one blew up, and the one that popped was the person that they would marry. And they'd say there was a little one of them. Now these are Googled, so they're not corroborated like with history. So if it's wrong, it's just amusing. But there was a little rhyme they said, which I thought was again a little bit mean, but it's like, if you hate me, burn and die. If you love me, pop and fly. So whichever hazelnut popped was the person that they were going to marry, apparently. And there was another good one that I quite liked as well, but I feel a little bit bad about the snail, because you're supposed to catch a snail on Halloween night and lock it into a dish so it can't climb out, and then in the morning, if the snail slime will have written the letter the first letter of your sweetheart's name in the dish in slime. And I'm like, this is like gothic all over. It's like, this is so gothic. You know, if you're sort of like, let's predict your future husband, you know, in the summer everyone's using daisies. It's like at Halloween, we're going to use snail slime and hazelnuts and candles in dark rooms. It's just like...
It does give. All I'm hearing is that Labyrinth song. Slime and snails. Oh yeah. Yeah, they use slime and snails. You've watched Labyrinth, haven't you?
I have. I'm just trying to think which bit of it.
Yeah.
That film terrified me when I was younger. I couldn't watch it until I was about, without being scared, until I was about 30. It's like, it terrified me. I don't know why. I saw it and I wasn't even that young. I think I was about 9 or 10. But there was something about that film that, I mean, I love it now. But it,
Yeah.
the little what was it? The hands in the oubliette thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. So yes, my brain sort of is still a little traumatized about it. So it's like you'd have to remind me which bit it was.
The dance magic dance, that one with the baby.
Oh right, where he's
Yeah.
where he's up and down the stairs and things in the
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, well, there is so much to unpick from all of that. I think, I mean, I'm interested in the so with the apple is supposed to be quite it's a magical tool. If you were to cut an apple in half, the sieves kind of, it's a 5-pointed star. So a lot of spell work, apples are used. So, and that's always been the same. So obviously that's something that's kind of...
I didn't know that because a lot of the prediction ones actually use apples. Because I was going to ask you about that, obviously being more interested in witchcraft, because there was another one that if you get an apple and you peel it into a long, the apple peel into a long string. My brain's just making random words up now. You know, if you peel it into a long bit of peel and then you chuck it over your shoulder apparently or something, and then if it makes a letter, that's the letter of your future spouse. And then there was
how big that apple has to be be able to chuck the peel, just like...
Well, I think there's a lot of spouses with C and S.
Yeah.
You know, because I was thinking, well, how would you know, you wouldn't be able to get so many letters out of it. So I was just thinking they must all have had like the same 5 names or something for it to work properly.
Yeah, because you're not saying you're going to have an Aaron or an Amy. I mean,
No, any sort of like the complicated letters. So you'd have like a C and S, what, a W maybe.
yeah.
If it sort of like if you weren't very good at peeling, it's like. But mine would be a very short one. It would just be like a 2-inch long stick, so it'd be I basically.
Yeah,
I think for now.
must be like cooking apples. You probably have to do this with cooking apples because, like
Yeah.
with little, I can't imagine you having much of a peel. But so with so apples are linked to love spells.
Okay, that would explain
And
it then. Yeah,
yeah,
I didn't
uh,
know that.
and then the seeds from apples are used in spells as well because of obviously the growth aspect of it. But it's favored because obviously when you cut an apple in half, yeah, you have the 5-pointed star in the middle. But even when I was a kid, I remember like you used to have hold the stem. I'm showing you now, no anyone can no one else can see. But you'd hold the stem and you would turn the apple, and you'd for
Right.
every turn you'd say a letter. So, and then whatever letter the stem broke off on would be the person that would be your true love or who you would marry. Or and I remember I remember being 5 and doing some...
I
Oh,
think I might
clearly.
get about. Yeah, I was going to say. I think I might get like 4 apples on. Is it tomorrow? Is it? Yes. Yes, tomorrow night. So I might get 4 apples. It's just sort of like try all the different ones and see what I come up with.
Please do. And if you
I'm
can
quite
film
curious.
it, even better.
It might spell out a "What are you doing, you idiot?"
Or WTF.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I'd know it. Knowing the spirits in my house wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if I got that instead. It was like, hello.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, actually, I can understand that. I did baseline sweep once in my house before we done an investigation, and I think I've told you this already. I might be getting deja vu, but I done a baseline sweep in where I lived. I've lived here for a long time, and I'd done it about 5 years in. And I was just like, hello, is anyone there? Would anyone like to communicate? Kind of, it wasn't, I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't doing anything with the equipment. I was just doing and I was using the spirit box at the time. So I was kind of checking that the speaker was okay, checking that everything was charged, just having a look. And I literally 5 seconds of me doing that, and I had in this man's voice as clear as day telling me to F off. But it's the way he said it as well. It was like, oh, do you know what I mean? Like, is it? And I was like, how long have you been wanting to say that to me? I was like, it was your time to shine, and you took it by both hands. Like, yes, finally, it's time to tell her what I really think.
Yeah. The first ghost hunt I ever went on, there was like about 3 swear words come through, and I was like, are they allowed to do that? Because he didn't just say that, and everyone just looked at me, and I was like, okay, maybe I'm making it up, but I'm pretty damn certain he's just sworn at us in at least 3 different ways.
Yeah, the definition of like a paranormal like dinner lady, where you could just go and tell to govern it. Those were the days.
I was just like, I mean, of course, I suppose with them being people, there's no reason why they wouldn't just swear at you. Absolutely. But it was just like so innocuous, because like you're like, oh, is anybody there? And it's like, oh, beep 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 beep. You're just like, okay. Just, yeah, that was a night. That was, yeah, it was quite interesting.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, they do. Yeah. To be fair, I don't think it's been a long time since it's been a long time since on a ghost hunt. I went on one recently, and I had a really not so great experience. It wasn't anything to do with the paranormal. It just was like a series of unfortunate events. Just did not deem the night in great favor. But yeah, it's been a long time since I've been investigating, but it's been a long time since I've been in an investigation and there's been swearing from spirit. I haven't had that for a long time. But then I suppose if you think about it, these locations are so overly investigated, they probably are at their wits' ends.
Maybe, yeah, they just get, it's like, oh god, it's another set of them living. Because it's like, obviously, you get some places like with soldiers and stuff, I mean, they swear a lot anyway, so I suppose it does kind of make sense, really, that they would occasionally get annoyed.
And to be fair, I can have a visitor maybe once a month. I'm happy. If someone was to turn up one day and then come back the next day, I would not be impressed.
Especially asking you the same questions over and over again. It's like, seriously. Because that's what I was like. We went, I can't remember where we went, and I was just like, they must get so bored of like, is there anybody there? What is your name? When did you die? And it's like, stop rubbing it in that I'm dead, will you? For crying out loud. Just ask me something else, anything. What year is it? I don't care. I'm a spirit. There's no time here.
Time is a social construct.
Yeah,
maybe there'd be a lot more interaction and a lot more evidence if we weren't asked. Like, bring something new. Be original. Ask me what the colour was.
Actually, that's an interesting one, because everyone sort of turned around to me and said, well, what do you want to ask them then? And I was like, I don't know. It's like, well, your favourite colour is a good start. It's like,
what's your favourite thing to do? What's the favourite thing? What is the last thing you ever ate? And are you happy that was that? And if you could change it, what would it be?
Yeah.
Maybe we'd have a little bit more interaction. Then probably, do you know what? Unless you ask me something else, something different, I'm not talking no more. Because you're not listening. No one's listening to me.
I do wonder if that's why. Because I don't know if you get the same thing at locations. Is like there'll be nothing, and then all of a sudden you'll have this flurry of activity, and they'll have interaction, then they'll just disappear, and you can tell they've gone. And everyone's
Yeah.
like, oh, it's because there's no energy. And I'm thinking, well, maybe they've turned up hoping that somebody would ask them something different for a change, and they're like, oh, for God's sake, it's this again. Let's go back next door.
Yeah, they were just using a table in there. Let's make that dance.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like, bored now. It's like, let's go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I might try that. I have to see if I can come up with some different questions and see what happens next time I go on one.
I think it'd make it a little bit more interesting for us as well. And also, I know we've digressed massively. This is meant to be a Halloween, you know, it is. But I run out of things to ask as well. Like,
Yeah.
you have some there. You're like, oh, how old are you? How many is there of you? How many is there of us? How did you die? Or are you here for someone you know? Or are you here, are you connected to the land? And then after a while, it's like, so what else is there to ask?
One of my friends once told me there was somebody following me around in a flat, and he was wearing slippers and he got a mug. And I was like, I'm not freaked out by him because he's wearing slippers and he's got a mug. So, unless he's planning on bashing me over the head with it. And she was like, oh, he's a spirit guide. He's just adopting that form to sort of like so that it doesn't freak you out. And I was like, well, having an invisible person following you around freaked me out in my own home anyway a little bit. But I was just like, can you ask him, does he ever visit other spirit guides, and do they all sit around the table and all like drink tea and talk about like their respective charges and what kind of rubbish day they've had? I said, does he ever go and visit spirit guide friends? Has he got any friends? And she just looked at me and was like, he's a spirit guide. I was like, yeah, but there's a lot of spirit guides, isn't there? I mean, where did they go? Are they with me all the time, or do they just wait for the bat signal to go off and they're like, oh God, we better go and help her out again? It's like, she just looked at me and I was like, I want to know these things. Do they have tea parties? Do they celebrate their birthday? It's like, do they have spirit guide friends that they go and visit when they're feeling a bit down about the people that won't do as they're told in the real world? So yeah, and she thought I was a bit mad.
Well, like meetings where they go, right, I have this case and I've tried doing this with them and it's not worked, and then the other ones go, well, have you tried doing this? They go, oh no, I haven't actually. I'll go back. I'll have at the same time next month, everyone. See you there. And then they come back. All of them bring their little caseloads.
That's what I reckon. They must have debriefing and they must go to spirit guide school to learn some new techniques, because they're like, this one is just, I cannot get through to her. She's so stubborn. It's like she knows what she wants to do. Like, how do I? Have anybody got any ideas? It's like, but yeah, no. But those are questions I asked, and I at that point in time, perhaps she didn't want to interact with it any more than she'd just seen it, because she only came around to see if my house was haunted. And she was like, I'm not prepared for this conversation. And I was like, well, I want to know. I never did find the answer because he disappeared after that. So he's probably, oh my God, she's on to us. It's like,
slippers. It was slippers that gave him away. So have a little quiet, quick getaway. Shuffles along. I think with like spirit guides and stuff, and what I've learned, and again, I say what I've learned because I'm really careful, because everyone's got their own interpretation of their experiences and what they make sense. But what I've learned is that we go through life and we learn our lessons, and as we learn our lessons, we progress. And if we don't learn, then we come back and we learn the same lessons again, but in a different way. And you actually see that throughout life. So if you've got this one person that goes through the same thing over and over again, it's usually because they've not learned the lesson the first time. They find themselves back in a situation where they're learning it again. And then they progress as they learn. They progress, and they then become the guide. So I think if that is the case, then they should have a big backlog of previous experience to go by. You must have to be a really unique case now to break them. They need to have like a meeting to just regather themselves. Like,
it wouldn't surprise me in my case at all if they have regular meetings and Zoom calls.
Yeah.
Like, because I haven't seen anyone like that since. I think that they're collaborating now. There's not just one of them. I think there's quite a few. I think I've gone up to the special special branch. It's like,
okay, all right, yeah.
apparently on Halloween it's quite a good time to ask spirits for advice. to come back around to the subject of Halloween. But mainly the advice. Actually, it's a slight downer on the vibe a little bit. But in Wales, they used to write their names on white stones and throw them in the fire and the Halloween fire. And then the next morning, if their stone wasn't there, they wouldn't make it to the next Halloween. So it's like
I'm too
I
paranoid.
was just like, would you really want to know?
Absolutely not. I am
Yeah,
too
could you
paranoid.
imagine, like, with your kids, it's like, here, little Johnny and little Jimmy, you got your name on. We want to know if you're going to leave us or not, so we can prepare. But,
No. But then
but yeah,
there is a lot of, again, so with Halloween, there is a real undertone of death throughout anyway. And I think, again, it goes back to what it's that facing their own morality, the fact that they've got all this going on in front of them. And again, I've gone back to it, what I've said before, praying to make it through to spring. So I think it's the not knowing and finding ways to be able to get one step ahead if something bad is going to happen that they know. And a lot of the darker traditions of Halloween, a lot of the ones that are linked to death, is to try and be like one step ahead.
yeah.
Whether it's going to happen or not. But yeah, there is some really peculiar. So talking about traditions that we get young people to do, which isn't the white star, the writing the name on the stone and throwing it in. And do you know what?
We should bring that back.
No, I cannot. I cannot. Do you know why? I'll say I cannot. I've watched too many films. Like there was a film a little while ago called Countdown, I think it was called, and it was
Right.
about this app that you could download, and it would literally tell you how many days you've got left or how many hours you've got left. Have you seen it?
No, I've not heard of that one. I'm not
That
sure.
was enough for me to know that I just don't want to know. But I'm sure it's called Countdown. It was on Netflix a little while ago. I was watching it. And there's lots of films. Again, this fascination of knowing when it's going to happen isn't a new theme at all. It's actually something that has been around for as old as time. But one thing that is also been around is dressing up in 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 costumes and stuff. And I saw a post today talking about how this one person could not get a head around trick-or-treating, how it's just a form of begging, how we spend all year telling young people not to take sweets off of strangers, and then we just dress them up and send them to strangers' doors and just there like begging for sweets. And there's lots of I was trying to get my head around, it was from that post actually that made me kind of go away and think about it a little bit more. um so with with dressing up, it's something that people would do, um one, to disguise themselves as spirits and monsters, so that the walking spirits wouldn't know that they were living, so they wouldn't affect them in any way. And then the other one was that adults, and this is in Ireland as well, I think it's in Ireland, where the adults would dress themselves as spirits so that the Fae wouldn't take them, which I know at my ripe old age we don't mess with the Fae.
Yeah.
So I can understand. I could see I I could see myself doing that for that reason, to be fair. But there is this other like sociological aspect of it. This is something that's been going on pre-Christian era, where people would dress up, and they would go and the way that it was portrayed is like a redistribution of wealth. So no matter where or what era you're in, they've always got poor and you've got those that aren't poor. You know, you've always got that economic divide. And again, this is the time of year where the harvest has come in. There's plenty of food to go around. However, that's not how it's always dished out. So what they would do was they would, in lieu of receiving food and treats, they would dress up or they would perform, or they would, they would sing, or they would tell a joke. And if you look, that starts at Halloween, but that doesn't finish there, because we do it at Christmas as well.
Yeah,
For,
yeah.
and it was a way of those that didn't have very much to be able to be included in that by performing for those that did have it to spare. And then there was this redistribution of this abundance. That's not why we do it now. We do it now, and also there was also when during the harvest we would leave food on the doorstep for ancestors. And again,
Yeah.
that's not just what you see during Samhain or Halloween. We see that at the Festival of Death, Festival of Dead. We see it in Chinese and Japanese cultures as well. So it's something that we've always done. So we now just have people that are dressing in
because that's the thing I always find really strange about Halloween. It's like it's all about, aside from the divination of your future spouses, it's all about death, and yet we engage the children in it. And I've always found it a little bit, unless like you say, the idea was to disguise the children so they didn't attract the ill fortune. Sort of like, because it sort of seems I've always been a little bit conflicted about the idea, like you say, that the trick or treat thing, because it is actually quite threatening if you think about it at its core. I mean, I know it's not taken in that vein now, because it's like, oh yeah, you just, we're going to give you sweets because we don't want the trick. But it's like, but then I suppose, like you say, if they were afraid of what might happen and the fact that spirits and evil spirits and things like that were walking, if the children are dressed up like that, then they can't come to harm in the same way. So I suppose they have to behave a little bit, sort of like not devilish, but the sort of like, that sort of, I could go one way or the other in order to disguise them. So I wonder if that there is some subconscious thing in play there, maybe.
I agree. And also, if you actually look at the costumes from then, they are horrific.
Yeah,
They are
terrifying.
Yes, I mean now you've got, a sexy cat, or
Yeah.
a devil in some hot pants and push-up bra. Whereas then they look like someone had removed the face of another person and then put it on, and they were just like wearing it as a, I don't know. It was just so weird. They're so weird and peculiar. And even then, when you look at the Easter Bunny like photos,
Oh God, yeah, the bunny. Oh my God, that, yes. there's those two shots. The one with the two kids sitting on the Easter Bunny's lap, and it just looks like something out of like Insidious or something. I don't know. And it's just like, yeah, I can't unsee that image since I saw that this year. It's just sort of like, I'm like, that's Halloween all year round. That is. It's just sort of like, yeah.
exactly.
But, yeah, because didn't they have with the trick or treat things, they used to allow the kids to run a bit riot, didn't they, in some areas? I think they were allowed to knock on doors and run away and stuff, do that classic one.
I think they did the trick. I think yeah, I think they would do tricks. I'm not too sure about the running away. I think the idea was for them to be able to get goodies. Um, and then obviously that was more like driven by the fact that they didn't want a treat. And I suppose, I don't know what, I haven't come across of what tricks used to be. Sorry, I haven't come across
It was
what they
just
would
something
do.
I read last night, where I think it was a Scottish one, where they had the turnip lanterns, and the sort of like lads were allowed to run riot a little bit on the Halloween night, and they used to knock on doors and run away and stuff. But there wasn't any more to the superstition, so I couldn't really look into sort of like what the point was, unless it was, like you say,
Oh,
mimicking the dead knocking on the doors and not being there type thing. They were
yeah,
just trying to freak everyone out. It's hard to tell when you research via Google, to be fair.
yeah.
But I was sort of like, I was not going to go into the scholarly, because I was like, I need 10 years for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so no, it was a little bit of a random one, but yeah, I just thought it was funny, because like I say that you could understand sort of like the adults a little bit, but I've always found it a bit odd that we make, unless that is where the Americanized thing comes in, where it's about the kids,
Yeah.
you know, so it's treated as a holiday, not as a slightly more serious festival of the dead. It's actually a day of the kids and candy,
Yeah.
and you know, and the symbolism's gotten hidden a little. Well,
Yeah.
it's there, but the symbolism of it's become sort of divorced from the original intent. I don't know. I puzzle it every year. To be fair, it's
I
kind of
think
strange.
one of the things it has kept is it's always been performative. There's always
Yeah.
been an element of that's one thing that's remained. I think even I mean I've had a few conversations um about Halloween over the last couple of weeks, and actually telling someone that it's actually a Celtic festival, not an American festival,
Yeah.
is often one that people are like, really? I'm like, yeah, absolutely, it is. And but I think the way it's presented is, I think it's less about the significance. It's less about what it truly represents and what it has, and more about the from what we see. What I'm trying to say is the version that we are exposed to through different means of media isn't the extent of what it truly means. It is about um, trick-or-treating, it's about overeating, overindulging, it's about being able to dress up and and go to such extremes now. When you look at the extents that people go through modification and the pumpkins, it's not about warding off spirits or bringing prosperity. It's about who could be the most creative and artistic. So it has moved away massively, but I think what I like about it all is it still exists, though. Within that narrative, it still exists. So all these traditions that have been that have been stomped out, that are, not weighed in as being significant to holidays, or that holiday, should I say, or that festival, is still like the bare bones of it. It's still so real and so apparent.
Yeah, it's almost like there's a genetic memory of it that is still, and the undercurrent, I suppose, is a little more obvious at Halloween than at other times of year. That sort of, because you go, oh yeah, it's all about trick or treating and candy, but actually you are always a little bit scared on Halloween night because you never quite know.
Exactly. And
there is that slight undercurrent of fear there, I suppose, and the unknown. It does.
And I think as well with some of the superstitions, I know that one of the superstitions that we spoke about earlier was talking about running round backwards from your house around your house.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was like, I'd have trouble with that because I'm in a quarter house, so I can only walk backwards at the front of it. But if you walk counterclockwise 3 times backwards around your house before sunset on Halloween, it protects it from evil spirits.
Which is really interesting, because if you, for example, and again, this is like, where do these come from? Where do these origins of these superstitions come from? If, for example, near me, there's a church in Canuden. Canuden is in Essex, and it's meant to be, it's got a steep history in occultism and witchcraft. And in particular, there is a church in Canuden that is alleged to have a lady that has been buried there who's a witch. And to again, when you do Bloody Mary and you say these names 3 times, when this particular time you have to run around the church 3 times calling her name, and then
All
she'll make
right.
herself known to you. So again, these superstitions, they leak, and and again, you're supposed to do that on All Hallows Eve. You're meant to do it on Halloween as well.
Okay.
So these
So if
things,
you ran forwards 3 times around the church, you call up the witch. So if you were going backwards 3 times around the church, you almost like anti-spelling it in a weird kind of way. Is that, do you think, where it might possibly come from? It's like a counter spell?
Possibly. Possibly. I would
Have you ever
say
tried running 3 times around the church then?
absolutely not. Absolutely. I
Will a fast walk
I
do it? It's like, don't do
mean,
running anymore, I'll do a fast walk.
yeah, no, even that, I don't, absolutely. I believe I love going on investigations. I love going on investigations, but I also am very aware there's some things you just don't do. Just you don't mess with some things. Just like literally, there's no reason to. We don't need to know certain things. Like it's good to have superstition. It's like it's a really, really, really bad analogy, but I don't need to see Santa Claus to know that Christmas is a real thing.
Yeah.
And everything it's about. Like I can enjoy Christmas, for what it is in terms of Santa without actually seeing real Santa. So I can appreciate the church and everything that comes with it without being in the presence of such energy, I guess. But yeah, and that is a really fascinating. I go off on a tangent. That church is a really fascinating church. With lots of fascinating people linked to it as well in terms of witchcraft, and the area as well. Canuden is such a really beautiful place, but it's really linked to a lot of occultism and witchcraft and fascinating. But that's what that reminded me of, because again, it's like, where do these superstitions come from? I know that we've spoken about it before when we talk about the witchcraft trials and how people used to lure witches to be able to break hexes. They would create witches' bottles and boil them to make the witch so uncomfortable to be able to bring the witch to them so they can barter, or there was an exchange of blood. I don't know exactly. I just know that there needs to be like an element of blood to be able to break it in accordance to this theory. So essentially, they're the people that are trying to condemn witchcraft is partaking in witchcraft.
Yeah, the irony.
Irony. So, but it's, you can see where elements of some things are taken and then used in others, and that's what I was thinking about. Um, yeah. Have you got any other superstitions that are jumping out for you before I share my last tidbit?
I've got a couple. The two little. Well, I've
Quick
got a
fire
few more,
round.
but I've got. I was going to say I'm aware of the time. There was just there was a couple that I thought was a bit strange. There was one, like, you know how most of Halloween is about not seeing witches and witchcraft and evil spirits and things. And there was one where if you wear your clothing inside out and walk backwards on Halloween, you will see a witch at midnight. And like you say, with the origins of it, I'm like, I'm not entirely sure. If everyone's so frightened of witches, A, why would you want to see one? And why would that specific combination of wearing your clothes inside out thing come from? Or are you just sort of like freaking the witch out that much they have to go and have a look and see what's going on?
Yeah,
It's just like, what?
but yeah.
Like, and like, but then you say you've got the walking backwards thing in it. So I mean, like you say, is it a counter thing? Because you've got walking backwards around your house to protect it from evil spirits, but you've got walking backwards then to see a witch. So it's, which, obviously, are culturally seen as being bad, although, obviously it's not that cut and dry. But yeah, and there was another one I found was quite interesting. I'd love to see a paranormal investigator attempt this one. Was if you walk around a ghost 9 times, you will make it disappear. I'd like to try and pin down a ghost long enough to walk around it 9 times to make it disappear. It's like, because they don't stay there that long. So I thought that was an interesting one. I was like, well, yes, because it will have wandered off by the time you've walked around it 9 times. So whether that's like a distraction.
That is that is an impressive manifestation for it to appear
Yeah,
objectively to everyone for a
yeah.
period of time where that person go, no, 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 don't you go anywhere. and we'll walk around you and watch. It's magic. It's magic, and we're going to
Stop
disappear.
moving around. I'm trying to do 9 circles round you.
Yeah.
The best
Wow.
one I found, the best Halloween superstition I found before I forget, is the one about the blackberries, the Irish one. There's apparently it's bad luck to eat blackberries after Halloween, because an Irish goblin-like spirit called I think it's Puka, comes out on Halloween and defiles the blackberries. So you're not to eat blackberries after Halloween. So I'm not sure if he goes around licking them all or sticking his finger in them or not. But I mean, you can just imagine like, oh, I'm bored. It's Halloween. I'm just gonna. These blackberries are mine now. I've licked it. It's like no one else is having them. You know. So yeah, that was the best one I found. I was like, aside from the walking backwards one. I mean, there are other ones about like how to tell if there are spirits and things around, like spiders and bats and things. But yeah. But yeah, the best one I thought was the snail slime predictor and the blackberries. Don't eat blackberries.
So in our summary for this show will be the Irish goblin
Don't
and
eat the blackberries.
don't eat blackberries after midnight on Halloween. And wait, till when?
Well, until spring. Well, on Halloween, it says don't eat them after. Well, if you think about it, I suppose the blackberries disappear off the bushes after a bit. Because obviously coming into winter, so I'm assuming they mean don't eat the existing blackberries after Halloween, or don't ever eat blackberries ever again after Halloween, because every single blackberry's been licked by an Irish goblin.
And that's why they go from the tree, you see, because the goblin's just there, ravishing them.
But,
No. Interesting.
Yeah.
I've not heard some of those before.
You what, sorry?
I've not heard those before.
No, I hadn't. That's why I thought they were quite amusing and interesting. And like you say, the apple thing was quite interesting to learn, because there is a lot of apple symbolism, and you've got the apple bobbing as well. But like you say, if it's a strong magical symbol, then that would make a lot of sense.
And if you think about the apple, like that is, if you think about the story of Adam and Eve,
Yeah.
and the apple, so it's apples have always held strong spiritual significance, in terms of especially witchcraft and stuff like that. But you can see them in different types of stories. And also, that was an interesting. Did you see that fly across?
Yeah.
Light anonymity there. And also for like those in the Jewish community, they will always eat honey and apple on the New Year's Eve.
Right.
Because it's the combination is for sweet opportunities, basically. So it again is something that apples have got significant for new beginnings, new growth, development, and yeah, they mix honey with it as well and eat honey and apples as well on New Year's Eve as a like a good omen for new beginnings when you start something new. So yeah, so it is across all of the board apples, but definitely have a go tomorrow.
Yeah.
Do the see who turns up for your last piece of apple tomorrow.
Yeah, I've got to go get an apple.
Absolutely. So something that I come across that I thought was quite interesting was obviously Halloween related. So Halloween the film was actually inspired by the guy that actually produced the film, wrote the film. He was a psychology graduate, and around Halloween he went to a asylum as part of his course, which is often something that they do. And he come across a patient, and this patient apparently was looking so unwavered, had so lost behind the eyes, that he inspired the character that is Michael Myers. Now, there's lots of reasons why you could say that that was the case for this poor patient, but that was an interesting, and this was back in the 70s as well. So I'd like to say that we've made movement away from some of the treatments that were used back then, but I would say that some not so. We still use really outdated treatment sometimes. So, but yeah, you could kind of see why he might have been that way. But I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, I was
So,
going to say it really affected him then for it to be that memorable to make him want to do
the
an entire
whole
film. Yeah,
Halloween franchise, it's just not a film,
yeah,
it's like a
yeah.
franchise. Um,
Someone poor person sitting in the corner.
but talking about films, so I know you don't like me doing this, I should have prepared you before. But if you was to do a recommendation of a film to watch for Halloween, what would it be?
I'm not a massive horror film fan because if I watch ghosty, demony horror films in my house, I always get activity. But to be fair, the one horror film that I think is classic is Poltergeist, the original Poltergeist. It's a bit of a boring answer in a way, but that is the one horror film that the one horror film that stayed with me that freaked me out that I hated was The Ring.
Oh, really?
And it's like, oh my god, that because I could see that happening in real life. And it's like, but the film that I would watch again, if you don't count The Labyrinth as a horror film, obviously, is it's Poltergeist. I do actually. I still like Poltergeist. To be fair, it's a little cliche, but I thought it was a pretty good film, really. But
Yeah,
I've not seen the remake though. I don't know if the remake's any good.
I
But
haven't either.
the
And
original.
like when you look at the actually story of I mean that's a whole show within itself.
I was
There's
going to say you're
Yeah,
going
there's
to
a
the lore
whole
of that
show
one.
because there's a lot of films that are considered cursed because of things that had happened on set. And I know that the young girl who played the character, the youngest character, actually was coming quite poorly and stuff through the making of the
Yeah.
film and stuff like that. Um, but you always that Native American burial ground seems quite when you go. I think they try to loosely link that to the Amityville haunting allegedly that building was built on top of a burial ground, but again there's like lots of things that can dismiss that. But yeah, absolutely classic. I think
Yeah.
for
What about you?
me it would be okay, so I'll be honest with you, I watch horror films anyway. I especially watch them in the month of October. I have literally just watched the the Fallen House of Usher.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh my, it was phenomenal. If you're a Edgar Allan Poe fan, which I am, there's
Yeah.
so many. It was, I was watching it, and every time there was a reference, it's like, oh my God, that's what they're talking about that. And I was like, yeah, I got really excited about it. And then at the end, like, spoiler alert, he read the poem out, which was like, ugh, goosebumps. But that is really, really good. But as in a classic film, I think my most favorite film has to be, um, I would say probably The Craft. It's not really a horror film.
I actually, yes. I see. I don't class it as a horror film, but I do love that film. I
Yeah.
went to see when it came out the cinema, and I was expecting complete trash. And me and my friend walked out. We were like, "Oh yeah!" And then the lads we were with at the time were like a bit freaked out, and they were like, "I'm not sure about this." And we were like, "That was actually because they did a lot of research on witchcraft for that film, so it is actually in a weird kind of way." But again, I've not seen the remake. I meant to, well, or
I
the
haven't.
reimagining, whatever it's called. I
Yeah.
don't know if I want to because I did love the original film.
Yeah,
I don't really know whether I'd class it as a Halloween film, but I suppose it is in a way. But yeah, I agree with you on that one. I did love that film.
I
Yeah,
haven't
very,
watched the remake either.
yeah.
Yeah.
um,
Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our show. On the basis of this show, I'm sure we've got four more in the pipeline.
hopefully, yeah.
Cursed horror films might be the next one. I'm not too sure.
I was going to say we've run a lot of different subjects today, so I mean we've got plenty to to tick over. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for this evening. Thank you for joining me again. And we will see you next time. Thank you everyone for joining us. So I'll say
Thank you
good
very
night.
much.